This thing is recording. Should make this. I need to do it. Thank you. Okay, sorry for the delay, but now we are here. Everybody sitting in front of us, and this is the last lecture of the year. We just do it, and it's like a little bit of a Christmas edition. So everybody's cozy. We have our Fosters, and we have Oliver tonight to tell a story about unwanted gifts and misunderstandings in the family and how you deal with the guilt that everybody knows in this situation. And also some parts of his new story from his short novels called Architectural Fathers, written by Canary Wharf. And yeah, I'm curious. I guess we are.
Cool. Okay. So this talk is called Favourite Son, and it's going to be roughly in 2 parts. The first part should take about 25 minutes, and that's written by me, and it's 3 shortish texts about something that people don't talk about enough, which are the things that our families give to us. And then in the second part, I'm going to read an extract from the first book of the new series of Architectural Fathers by Canary Wharf, which is not written by me, it's written by Canary Wharf, but it's published by me. So the whole talk, I'm just going to talk for like 45 minutes. Just in case people don't know what I'm on about with Architectural Fathers by Canary Wharf, this is it. It's an ongoing series of illustrated memoirs that I published, which are written by Canary Wharf, who's the daughter of various men involved in the construction of London financial district, Canary Wharf. Each episode concerns a different father and occurs at a different moment in time. And this is the first series in this box set. And this is the first and the second series. If people haven't seen it, maybe pass it around. I'm going to be reading from the green one, which is the new one, which is called An Unsustainable Development. And it's the first of the second series. All the new series are based upon the new residential district, which this is. TSUJ image of. And the first phase of this will be completed in 2020, and it's going to bring 3,000 new residential homes to London. So the idea of this talk, what I'm about to do, is I'm going to sort of introduce stories about my family. Well, use stories about my family to introduce Canary Wharf stories about her family. There's perhaps some kind of crossover between my own domestic situation and Canary Wharf, and there's some kind of like relationship between family and all these new homes that Canary Wharf's new residential district is going to bring to London. So I'm just going to read, and hopefully like it's going to like wash over you for like 45 minutes, and then perhaps we can have some kind of conversation about it afterwards. The first 2 stories I'm going to read are based on gifts. Well, the first is a gift, and the second is my inheritance. The first one is quite Christmassy, because it's a Christmas present of a dressing gown that I received for Christmas when I was 18 from my mother, and it's called Small Mercies. I'm going to illustrate these talks with just images from the Canary Wharf website. If I can actually, sorry. It's quite difficult doing this. Here we go, gallery. Because I've got a lot of like generic images of interiors. Where is it? Here it is. This guy's got a dressing gown on. Obviously this is not where I grew up. It doesn't exist. Okay, this is called Small Mercies. When I was 18, I was given a dressing gown for Christmas by my mother, which I rejected because I thought it was a boring present. Faced with my ingratitude, my mother, consistent with a destructive yet successful career in centrist politics, decided to flip the situation on its head by suggesting she'd actually given me the greatest gift possible. She went on to explain that being given a gift that we don't want is a painful yet wonderful part of growing up. The greatest gift we are given is the gift we don't want, my son, she told me, because it gives us the chance to realize we can exist in the ecstatic realm outside of civilization's folly. Christmas is bullshit, just as families are bullshit. Mummy, I whimpered, Christmas and families aren't bullshit, are they? And to this she smiled condescendingly. Yes, they are, dear. And when you realize this, you'll be a real adult, and one I can be proud of, because big boys achieve a kind of existential sanity that refuses to conform to the madness of a demented civilization. That is your gift this Christmas. Do you like it? Oh, Mummy, I love it, I cried with delight. January then came and went, and I realized that the gift Mummy had given me didn't feel that great. In fact, I'd spent the past 4 weeks in bed doing nothing but crying, staring, and sleeping. I went to find Mummy to tell her the gift she had given me seemed not to be working. She nodded solemnly. I'm sorry I lied to you. I felt bad that you thought the gift I gave you was so poor, so I told you a tale to cheer you up. I'm not sure if it'll help, but I thought about it more, and there's a second part to this makeshift gift if you'd like to hear it. Yes, please, I said, eagerly hoping she would flip the gift again into a positive sphere. Now remember the gift of existential sanity I gave you, that gives you privileged access to the ecstatic realm of higher truths. I nodded expectantly. Well, the uplifting promise of existential sanity actually plays out as depression, because the romantic kind of madness that is required to reach that ecstatic realm outside of civilization's folly is just as much bullshit as Christmas. Well, I was crushed. Oh God, this is really bad, I replied. It turns out the inauthenticity of society isn't that edifying. The existential sanity that first you said gives me access to higher truths, in reality just makes me into a dull and operative depressive. That's right, Mother responded reassuringly. So the gift you gave me is also one I don't want, because existential sanity doesn't make me feel liberated from the shackles of society at all. Rather, it makes me feel like an insubstantial, depressed, miserable failure who is at odds with the world. Which is why it would have been easier for you to say thanks for the dressing gown, my mother replied enigmatically. So that's the first gift, which is a dressing gown. And the second thing I'm going to read is An Inheritance, and it's about a a wedding dress that I inherited. Skip this an image here. Do this again. This is just an illustration of a wedding dress. That wasn't the wedding dress that I got. So this text is just about my auntie's role in receiving my inheritance, and it's called Anti-Value and the Prickly Issue of Inheritance. My auntie makes her money as an eBay power seller, so her eBay reputation is something she takes very seriously. When her mother died, she used eBay to get rid of many items from her house, and she said privately that it was a relief to get rid of the dolls, tea towels and military paraphernalia that she had found so oppressive when she was growing up. In her enthusiasm to free herself of these things, however, by mistake she put on eBay an item which was actually intended to be my inheritance. My grandmother had no money, but she was still a special person to me, and it meant a lot that she left me something, and it meant even more when I found out what it was that she wanted me to have. The item was her wedding dress. It was tiny and peach. She had got married in the 1930s when she was 16. She was a small woman when I knew her, but this dress was really tiny, so small that I couldn't imagine it being worn by an adult, and I really couldn't imagine what I would do with it, but still I was touched. Auntie, I said confused, isn't it strange that Grandma would leave me her wedding dress? I mean, we never talked about it, and you know I'm not that interested in weddings. And besides, her wedding didn't go particularly well, did it? I mean, it's not a happy item. Nonsense, my auntie replied. It's very special that she thought of you. It is lovely, I said to make my auntie happy, as we both looked at the dress. It was then It was then that my auntie told me the extent of the pickle she had got herself into. When I was putting all your grandmother's stuff on eBay a week ago, by mistake I put on the dress, which I knew was for you, but I was so busy that absent-mindedly I put it on eBay as well. I only remembered because the other stuff I put on had started to sell, and when the emails started coming in I realised what I'd done. I'm so sorry, I can't take it off now because there's a winning bid on it, and there's only 11 hours left on the auction. Can't you take it off? I asked naively, to the great annoyance of my auntie, who scolded me for asking her to do such a thing, before angrily repeating the eBay rules and explaining how her taking it off now would compromise her power seller status, effectively leaving me dead as your dear old grandmother, she melodramatically added. I apologized for being so blasé, and she replied, "No, I'm sorry. I've ruined everything. That was all of your inheritance." "How much is the bid for?" I asked. "Only 99p, she answered. "It's okay, Auntie," I said proudly. "I'll win the auction, and everything will be as it should be." "Oh, thank you. Grandma was always so proud of you, of the way you turned out, such a responsible, good child," my auntie said, and my face blushed, and I felt proud to be able to put straight my family's little mistakes. The next day my auntie invited me round to my grandmother's house, early so I could see out the auction, before all the other grandchildren came for a meal that had been arranged to celebrate Grandma's life. I arrived at the house around noon, and as the auction was ending at 10 past, I immediately took my place at a computer and turned it on. My auntie immediately began to fret. "Oh, what have I done? What if you lose the auction? The dress, it might be your last chance. What if you lose it? I'm so stupid," she said as she paced frantically around and began to cry. "Don't worry, Auntie," I said to her. "There's no way I'll lose this auction. Look, to make sure I'll put as my highest bid all the money I can muster from all my credit cards and savings." I quickly did the maths in my head and typed in £12,000 into the highest bid box and then pressed place bid. She was delighted by this noble gesture and took me into her arms, and as she beamed at me, through the light of her eyes I felt what it was to be a responsible adult. The final minute came, and the price of the dress was £15.50, and there had been 4 bids placed on it, which surprised me, as I had no idea who would want this tiny wedding dress. The price seemed pretty high as well, but when I said as much, my auntie said firmly that it was because it was silk and the lacework was second to none. I sensed that she was slightly offended by my remark, so I said, "Anyway, it's not about the money, is it?" "It's a very fine dress, and very special," she replied. The auction seemed to have ended, and as the clock ran down and the price stayed at £15.50, which was an okay price, if not more than I thought it should be. But then after a couple of seconds, a series of boxes flashed up on the screen, and the final one read that my winning bid was £11,550. "That's a lot," my auntie said calmly. I clicked frantically, then checked my email. Every message from eBay said that I'd just paid £11,550 for this small wedding dress. I looked at my auntie and she was in tears. "This is the nicest gesture. Your grandmother would be so proud," she said as she grabbed and squeezed me tight. "That's all the money I have," I said, alarmed. "I don't know if I can go through with it." My auntie looked confused, like a toddler had just fallen on their bottom but wasn't sure if they were going to cry or just get on with playing. "Well, you bought it now, and you're lucky. Some people never left anything that special." Then she did start crying, and she wailed how ungrateful I was, and how she hadn't been left anything in her life, which was untrue because she'd just been left her mother's house, but she was very upset. It was then that my cousin came in, and in floods of tears he walked over to my crying auntie and started saying, "I'm sorry, Mummy. I tried, but it just went for too much." "It's okay, baby. You tried your best. That's all Grandma could ask for. She was very proud of you still, how you turned out," my auntie said to calm him down. "Did your mum put your inheritance on eBay as well?" I asked. He nodded, then said, "But it went for too much. I feel so ashamed." "I'm sorry. I'm so stupid for just putting all the things on eBay without thinking," my auntie said. "What was your item?" I asked. But my cousin just cried harder and my auntie scolded me for being insensitive. See, you're lucky you won your item. Perhaps you could have a bit more grace about it. I wanted to say that there was no way I could pay for that dress, but at that moment passions were high and it seemed insensitive, so I said nothing, thinking I would sort it out in secret later. A few hours after, my sister and other cousin came to the dinner that had been thrown to mark our grandmother's death. Everyone was really down and conversation was minimal. My auntie went to the kitchen to get the starter, and my cousin followed her in. They were in there for a while, and curious as to what they were saying, I went in to get a soft drink from out of the fridge. When I entered, in a hushed, ashamed tone, I heard my cousin apologising, as he had lost the eBay auction of the item that had been bequeathed to him as well. My auntie thanked him for trying and held him. She told him that grandmother was very proud of him no matter what. He returned to the table with shame visibly weighing on his sagging body. No one spoke. Then my auntie pointed out that my sister hadn't touched her food. My sister apologised and said she had lost her appetite. Don't tell me you lost your inheritance on eBay as well, I said, exasperated. You really are an arsehole, aren't you? She answered. I sensed from the rest of the table's eyes that they all agreed. What was the item, I asked, and she told me it was none of my business. Then my auntie interjected. It's really not polite for you to be so insensitive, especially as you won your item. The table that aimed touched.
Come and squeeze inside. No worries.
Cool.
You as well. You can also maybe sit there if you like.
You really are an arsehole, aren't you? She answered. I sensed from the rest of the table's eyes that they all agreed. What was the item? I asked, and she told me it was none of my business. Then my auntie interjected. It's really not polite for you to be so insensitive, especially as you won your item. The table aimed tuts and disapproving looks at me, and I apologised, not wanting to go into it any further. The meal went on in near silence, and an unbearable heaviness hung in the air. After dessert, I offered to do the washing up, and my sister insisted she would help. I washed and she dried, and as we did so, I asked her what the item was that she had lost. She said she was too ashamed to talk about it, so I didn't press her any further. I then told her about my predicament with the wedding dress, about how my over-the-top gesture, which I intended as a kind of noble joke, was going to put me in catastrophic debt, as I didn't have a job and it was going to ruin me. My sister looked appalled, then stormed out of the room. I finished the washing and drying on my own, then made coffee for everyone and brought it through. Everyone was still almost silent, and my sister scowled at me from across the room. It was then that I snapped. This is a time to celebrate Grandma's life, and look at us, I exclaimed. They were just items after all, they're not worth all this misery. Just that stupid wedding dress isn't worth £11,550. You have no idea how lucky you are, my cousin interrupted angrily. Lucky, I answered, totally confused. I just paid £11,000 for a dress that I could only use if I married a child. You're disgusting, my other cousin replied. I apologised for what I said, explaining that my words came out wrong. What I meant was that I was never going to get married to anyone, but even if I was, the dress was useless, unless they were incredibly small. No, I meant you're disgusting because you don't understand how lucky you are to have inherited wealth. The world's your oyster now. Inherited wealth? I've got a tiny wedding dress. Well, how do you think we feel, my cousin then asked. We've got nothing. We all lost the wedding dress that was left especially for us as our inheritance. We were all left wedding dresses? I asked, confused. No, I was left a wedding dress, my sister said, and then my cousin said the same. How could she have left the wedding dress to all of us? I asked. She didn't. She left it to you because you had the most money, my cousin replied bitterly. But I don't. It's just as much money as I have on my credit cards. It was just a stupid gesture because I thought it would make my auntie happy. but it seems it's made everyone really sad, especially me, as I have to buy this dress with money I don't have. My auntie then demanded that I left the house because I was upsetting everyone. I was so ashamed of my childish behaviour at my grandmother's memorial meal that after I went home I made a few calls and bank transfers and I paid for the dress in full. It was the adult thing to do. And perhaps by the time I've paid off my debts, my family will be able to be proud of me once more, and my reputation will be restored. I sent a message round to everyone apologising, and I told them that if they wanted to borrow the dress, they could whenever they liked. But no one has responded yet, apart from my auntie who sent me a link to the new items available on her eBay account. Okay, that's the second.
Hello.
This third piece is slightly different, not really a gift, but it's related. It's sort of an extension of what I'm talking about. The text is a film review that I wrote for Richard Side's film review magazine called The Tube, and it's another conversation with my mother, and it's kind of symptomatic of this sort of perpetual adolescence that she says has plagued me ever since she gave me a dressing gown for Christmas when I was 18. The text is called Oliver, and it's about the character Oliver in Luca Guadagnino's Call Me By Your Name from 2017 and Boots Riley's Sorry to Bother You 2018. It's really about my weekly... Sorry, I'm going to try and do that thing again. It's about my sort of weekly film watching session with my mum, where we watch different films and talk about them. Sorry, I need to find... I don't know what I did. Yeah, we watched the films in her front room, which is nothing like this front room. It's got a television in it. All the flats in this, other CGI images, none of them have televisions in them. All the rooms are always like arranged around art or arranged around the view. But anyway, the film review. There are some scenes in films that affect you so much that they burn an indelible mark in your mind's eye, colouring your perception of everything and everyone thereafter. One of those scenes for me is the apricot scene in Luca Guadagnino's Call Me By Your Name. In it, Oliver, an American research student, only 25, showcases his intelligence to Elio, a 17-year-old American multi-instrumentalist child prodigy, and to Elio's father, Mr. Perlman, an art history professor, the holidays in Italy, who invited Oliver to help him annotate some Italy slides. Oliver says, "I may have to disagree with you, Professor, about the professor's etymological attempts at the word apricot." He then gets stuck into his own, as he follows the origin of the word apricot through its Greek and Arabic origins. Elio looks on in awe at Oliver's performance. He's just as clever as his family. Imagine how rich he'd have to be to act like that. I bet he has maids like us, a mansion, maybe 5. I'm in love, Elio's eyes announce as Oliver takes his place next to his erudite translator mother, Anella Perlman, who inherited the mansion they're all in, along with the maids. She is also visibly stirred by Oliver's performance, refuting her husband like that. I wonder how he'll take that. And when she sees his contented nod of agreement, she sees that he loves it too. Oliver is amazing, I exclaimed aloud as I watched this scene alongside my mother at our weekly film watching get-togethers. But she wasn't concentrating on the film and thought I was talking about myself, as I'm also called Oliver. My mother then replied that Oliver was not amazing and launched into a hurtful and remarkably long list of Oliver's domestic and social failings that ended with banal things such as he never tidies up after himself, he never helps around the house, then went on to say that Oliver just sits around preening, indulging in pretentious ways of being right that have no consequences. So if you ask me, no, Oliver is not amazing. Oliver needs to sort himself out. Upset by her outburst, I pointed out that I wasn't talking about me, I was talking about the film, and that I thought Oliver in the film was amazing. She apologised about the confusion, but then said she couldn't take back what she'd said, as it was all true. Annoyed, I said some rude things about the state of our family, which I regretted instantly, because people can't really help those kind of things. To make peace and bring our disagreement to a close, my mother suggested that in order to clear the slate, we should watch the film from the beginning. So we did, and the apricot etymology scene came on again, and Oliver was amazing all over again. But this time she saw it, and I know she understood that Oliver was amazing, even though she never said as much. I imagine because of her wounded pride. A year later, another of our weekly film watching get-togethers. We were watching Boots Riley's 2018 film, Sorry to Bother You, and halfway through the film, Oliver turned up again, and delighted I squealed, "Look, Mum, it's Oliver!" She looked at me blank, so I reminded her. "You remember that amazingly intelligent and sexy man from Call Me By Your Name, who explained the etymology of the word apricot?" She shook her head with a confused look on her face, so I tried to help her more. "You remember he went on holiday to Italy with that really wealthy family, and he impressed them all with his beauty and intelligence, and he had sex with the young son Elio, and then Elio was sad because Oliver rang and said he had a girlfriend, and he was going to get married, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried." However, I think the exhilaration of seeing Oliver again had caused my sentences to become garbled, as I was speaking too fast and excitedly, because my mother's reply was confused as she asked, "Are you talking about when your ex-girlfriend suggested that because she didn't want to have sex with you, but still wanted you as an emotional crutch, you should have an open relationship, on the condition that you could only have sex with men?" "No," I replied angrily. "I wasn't talking about me, I was talking about Oliver. He was in the film we watched together last year, Call Me By Your Name, and he played this really intelligent and beautiful man who seemed to know everything and enjoyed showing it. And here he is again in this film, Sorry to Bother You." She looked at me, still confused, before saying, "You do know that's not Oliver." "What do you mean?" "That's Oliver from Call Me By Your Name," I said, frustrated that she didn't remember him. "No, I mean, he's not Oliver, That's Oliver, Mum," I interrupted, amazed that she didn't remember him. "He's an actor, you do know that?" she asked infuriatedly. "No, Oliver is a research student helping the art history professor with the practicality sides," I said, trying to jog a memory. "I mean he's an actor, him on screen. He plays different roles depending on what film he's in." "That's Oliver," I reiterated. "I can't believe you'd forget Oliver. I would never forget Oliver, ever." "Well, in this film, Oliver, he's not Oliver anymore. He's called Steve. Because he's an actor, he plays different roles depending on what film he's in," she said patronisingly. "Of course I know that. What I was saying is that that's Oliver, and he'll always be Oliver to me. Because I'll never forget that character. Because Oliver's amazing and intelligent, but you do know Oliver is played by an actor." "Mum, of course I know he's an actor. I'm not stupid. I'm talking about how special Oliver as a character is to me. And now he's in this other film, and even though he's called Steve and he's evil, I can't get Oliver and what he represents out of my head," I said definitively. "Oliver," she exhaled softly, as if the word she used to name her son was passing through her lips for the very first time. Then she shook her head in a melancholy fashion, embarrassed, I imagine, at how stupid she'd been. So that's the film. Now I'm going to read some of the new aspects of flowers. I'm just going to get. This is an illustration from inside the book. So this is the new book. It's called An Unsustainable Development, and it's set in 2020. And the father in this edition is called Andrew Walthamstow, and he's the CEO of Crossrail, which is of course important for the residential district, because it provides transport links for the new residential district and all the new people in it. In the new series, they're slightly different from the first ones. In the first ones, Canary always ended up sort of patronised and alienated by her family. But in this new series, she's not so much alienated by the strange situation she gets into, but rather she uses them as opportunities to capitalise upon. So I'm going to read an extract that is the major part of the strange situation that she gets into as part of her new job as an environmentalist. And then if you read the book, you can find out how she then turns it to her advantage. I'm going to read from page 17. So I'm going to try and fill in kind of what happens until here, so you kind of understand why she's getting wood from this guy. Quite a lot of stuff happens. It's a bit of a long explanation, I'm sorry. So the book begins with this huge argument Canary has with her husband Ryan in Franco Manca in the Crossrail station at Canary Wharf. The argument's kind of about the environment. It's about seagulls eating rubbish out of the water that surrounds the Crossrail station. This argument afterwards feeds back to the father, Canary's father, and it puts the idea that Canary has a passion for nature in his head, and he thinks because she hasn't had a job and she's 39 that maybe she could turn this into a career. So he uses his connections and gets her a job working for the Canary Wharf environmental team. This environmental team work on sort of creating and maintaining the green spaces in Canary Wharf as well as other issues to do with sort of sustainability. And another part of what they do, which is what Canary gets involved in, is around this idea of placemaking. And on the website that I started, the CEO of Canary Wharf talks about how he wants to change the buildings of Canary Wharf into a place, and that's what placemaking is. And that's what Canary gets involved with. So on the first day of the new department, Canary gets on really well with her manager, who's called Angela. And they meet the next day in Angela's office, and she tells Canary that she's got a plan for her to make a really good sort of impact in her new department. And the plan is based around these wood-using eco-stoves that a startup have developed that have already been widely used and bought in the Canary Wharf flats. These eco-stoves put wood through sort of a chemical process that creates so much energy that they're actually more efficient and environmentally friendly than the heating systems used in Canary Wharf. So Angela's idea that she puts to Canary is that these eco-stoves can be used to foster some kind of community with all the new residents, and they could form a social group of some kind that brings all the people of the estate together in a kind of shared ethical pursuit of a feeling of nature. Angela talks about how she got this idea because she grew up in the New Forest, and there was this stove community there, and as well as providing wood and stove maintenance for the people of the forest, this community also put on social events. So it sort of facilitated a social scene, and people from different bits of the forest got to come together and meet each other, which otherwise wouldn't have been possible. So her idea for Canary is that she would do the same thing for the new residents of Canary Wharf. And everything was basically done. People already had the stoves. And Angela sorted out this wood supply at Davide. So all Canary has to do is think of a name and then distribute the info and set up the group. And then she could all pass it off as her own work, and that would be an amazing start to the department. So then Canary goes away and she organises this stove community and thinks of a name, which is Cozy Wharf. And after she emails around the residents of the estate, and she sort of starts setting up the group. But then you sort of join it. She's going on a rounds with the people of the estate and just asking them what they think about the idea of the group and what they want from it and stuff like that. And everyone she meets is absolutely furious because they can't get the wood for the stoves because Angela's woodman, for some reason, is not. He's either not answering calls or they can't get through to him. And so everyone is completely furious. And then later in the round, Canary enters this flat, and this is the only woman in the estate who has actually received a delivery, and she's really like satisfied with the wood in her stove. She's got that's the stove there. She has her hand on it.
It looks like a car.
It looks like a car. So we're going to pick it up in this woman's flat. I've got a man's voice, of course, and in this Canary is a 39-year-old woman. If you use your imagination a bit. This extract's about 10 minutes long. I asked her what the woodman was like, and she smiled again strangely, like she knew something I didn't. He's great. He's hard to get hold of. Doesn't say much, but... She became lost in thought, and then regained her senses. Yeah, he's good. Really good. You met him? I answered that I hadn't, then asked to see the wood, and she showed me to a basket next to a shiny white stove that had 4 small logs in it. Doesn't make sense, I said, mistakenly saying aloud what was on my mind. She looked at me confused, so I continued. The woodman, I mean. He seems only to have delivered to you, but the deliveries are tiny. He could have done 100 other flats when he came. She smiled that strange smile again, then after taking the final drag on a cigarette said, I must be special, before stubbing it out on a nearby ashtray. Well, at least someone's satisfied with their stove, I said as I left. Very, she answered, reassuring me that at least the product was good, even if the woodman was a complete liability. I returned to the office and tried contacting Davide myself, as there could be no community without these stoves working, and this just wasn't good enough. He didn't pick up, so I contacted Angela again, and explained how the community was under threat before it even started, as the residents were getting really very angry about the wood not being delivered, and were threatening to return their stoves. Angela understood that there was no point just continuing trying to call him, as she told me he only had one mobile phone, and often just left it by his bed. I was astonished that she thought this was the person to provide the wood for the Canary Wharf estate. Surely there must be an organisation that could carry out this task better. But she insisted that his birch produced a third more energy, so was far more ecologically effective than any other supplier. Which after all is our main goal here, isn't it? Isn't it, Canary? She unnecessarily reminded me. How do we get through to him? This is so frustrating. I just spent the last hour trying to ring him, and like the residents, I feel like pulling my hair out. Angela let out a little laugh at my discomfort before telling me that first thing tomorrow I should drive and see him in person, as this was probably the easiest way of getting hold of him. He lived in the middle of the New Forest in a very remote spot. She sent me his address, then jovially told me to let my frustrations out in the forest. We laughed, and she reassured me that I was doing a good job, and Cozy Wharf was going to be a massive success. The roads on the way to the woodman's lumberyard got smaller and rougher as I got nearer. On the final stretch, I was driving down a dirt track that was surrounded by nothing but trees for what felt like ages. I was not used to driving off-road, and of course I wasn't sure where I was going, but I trusted the sat-nav and the address that Angela gave me, and finally I passed some wooden gateposts and drove into a clearing in which there was a small wooden hut that was surrounded by huge stacks of wood, protected by wooden frames. It felt so remote, like images you see of lumberjacks and their cabins in Canada, not somewhere in the UK. I parked worked 4x4 next to the woodman's truck and knocked on the door of the cabin. There was no answer, so I started walking around the grounds, my high heels digging into the moist grass. I hadn't thought about appropriate footwear in my morning rush. I searched for ages but couldn't find him. To say I was angry about this was an understatement. I rang Angela and she said she didn't know where he could be. She told me to wait in the car, and if he didn't arrive before nightfall I should drive back. I'd set off early and had forgotten to bring any food or drink, so I was starving and in a terrible mood as I sat there listening to some presenters droning on and on the radio. But after literally hours, I noticed that accompanying their voices was a regular clicking sound. I turned the radio off and stepped outside the car. The clicking was coming from the other side of the woodman's hut, so I made my way briskly around to see if he was there. I remember feeling incredibly angry. It was more than just being hangry. I felt like a whole community's frustration had somehow been injected into my chest. The woodman was there chopping wood with an axe. I shouted hello at him, but he ignored me and just carried on chopping. Hello? I tried again as I approached. I'm Canary Wharf. Do you know lots of people are trying to get through to you about delivering your treated birch for their eco-stoves? He didn't even look up. It's no way to run a business, I continued, but still nothing. I was now stood right next to him, but he was completely ignoring me as he carried on chopping his wood. Davide, I shouted, but still nothing. Davide, will you stop chopping wood? I said, becoming exasperated, and he just carried on. Davide, I don't think you understand how angry everyone is at your ridiculous service. Still nothing. I'm angry, I shouted. Stop chopping wood and fucking listen to me. Still nothing. Stop! 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 I screamed, grabbing his axe with my hand before he brought it down again. He relaxed his chopping stroke, but the cold metal of the axe clasped in my hand felt like it had cut my skin, and this sent me into an uncontrolled rage. I began hitting the woodman with all my force, mainly in his chest, which was uncovered, but a few blows were to his head, I must admit. He still said nothing, as I screamed and punched him with all my might. Slowly, with his big strong arms, he disabled mine and forced me close to his chest, stopping my attack. And here in the bare arms of the woodman, I broke down and cried. After a few moments, when he realized I was not trying to hit him anymore, he released my arms and held me in his tender, silent embrace. I cried heavy, mournful tears. It felt like I cried for my entire life in his arms, maybe for every life. He stroked my head softly and I wrapped my arms around his middle. My nose was pushed up against his bare chest, and I breathed in his smell, which was a mixture of the woods and human sweat. With my eyes closed, I suddenly felt at peace. It's hard to describe, but somehow I felt there and then part of the forest. As calm as a sapling, he felt its roots were in the perfect place, and knew it was going to be there for the next 500 years. He kissed the top of my head, and with my eyes still closed, I used my nose to move aside his dungarees and nuzzle into his chest. Then I took his nipple into my mouth and licked it slowly with my tongue. He adjusted his body and brought my head up to his, and we were kissing. Images of wild mushrooms came into my head as I tasted his mouth, which tasted alive like the forest. I ran my hand down over his belly until I reached his crotch, and as I rubbed his hard penis, his rustic hand made its way up my skirt. He gently moved my underwear aside, and my wet vagina welcomed in his caress. He laid me down on the leaves, and as he undid his dungarees, I got my first look at him. He looked like a giant troll, bulbous and dirty. His hair was wild and curly, which somehow complemented his brown misshapen teeth. He was not beautiful by conventional standards, but this wasn't a conventional situation. He placed his head between my legs, and as his tongue moved in me, I grabbed at the dirt with my hands. He slid up my body and entered me as we kissed. Then he moved steadily back and forth with great strength, and I felt my body sliding on the forest floor. Gliding smoothly over the mud, grass, and dead leaves, I climaxed loudly. Then he withdrew, and I held with my hands and mouth, until silently he squirted his seed onto the forest floor. Embracing each other, we gently lay down to join it. In each other's arms, partially closed amidst the grass, mud, and leaves, I felt warm and comfortable, even though it was a cold, wet December's day. He still said nothing. I did the same, as I didn't want this moment in nature to dissolve back into the reality of my life outside the forest. Eventually we straightened out our clothes and went into his hut, where he gave me a glass of water. I asked him if he could speak, and he avoided my eyes and nodded that he could. It's just you don't want to, I said, and he nodded again, but this time his eyes fixed on mine. He looked sad, weary, as he sat on his wooden bed, on his grimy blankets, and I knew it was because he knew what I was about to say, and I didn't want to say it, I didn't, but I knew it was my job. Davide, you have to deliver the wood to the people of Canary Wharf. Angela's got you this job, and frankly, if you don't do it, we'll have to find someone else. He shook his head slowly and stared at the floor. Then I said something I could never take back. "You know who owns this land, don't you?" He stared at me with this empty, sad look, and I wanted to take him in my arms once again. I wanted to undo his dungarees and have sex again in the floor of his hut. I wanted to feel at one with the forest, warm, safe, natural all over again. But instead I said, "You've got to the end of the week." He nodded sadly and lay back on his bed staring at the ceiling. I walked over and kissed his mouth, and once again felt the moisture of the forest move through me. "You've made me so happy," I said as I stroked his head, and I picked up his phone and turned it on for him. "Keep this on and charged and answer all the calls." The phone rang straight away, and he accepted the call and put it to his ear. I heard angry screams coming down the line, and every so often David exhaled audibly, which I guess I understood as, "I'll come as soon as possible and deliver your wood." I left him to it and went straight back to see Angela. I burst into the office and excitedly told her that I'd met the woodman and it was all going to be all right. The community was saved. He was going to deliver all the wood by the end of the week. Angela looked me up and down. "Canary," she said with a wry smile, "you're covered in mud." I looked down and my business suit was absolutely caked in mud, as well as my high heels. "I'm sorry," I said, embarrassed. I didn't even notice. Angela, still smiling, said, "Go clean yourself up, Canary." Flustered, I said I would, straight away, and as I walked out of the office, Angela called after me. "He's wonderful, isn't he?" I looked back and after a thoughtful pause said, "He is. He really is." I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for telling us your stories.
Yeah.
Good fun, I guess. I've read the other books of Canary Wharf before, which are quite a bit different than this one, because it was more like the adult version, or like the grown-up version. Also, like the woman now is like what, 38?
39, yeah.
And before, I have the feeling it was always like more teenager trying to understand her father or who her father is.
Yeah.
How did you make this like? How did it come together? This like transition from one to the other.
Well, I think in the new series of Canary Wharf, Canary seems to be writing more. Yeah, they seem to be more interested in sort of like sex than the first 5. And I think, yeah, it's kind of more like Julie Cooper sort of style writing than the first one. I guess interests have changed.
Yeah.
With the residential district, perhaps it has some kind of.
But do you think then the residential district of Canary Wharf has a certain influence on people, like on her? I like the character in the first books personally because he seems somebody who's like somehow in trouble and having this apartment that she didn't even know if it's hers because her father gave it to her somehow, and finding the way to being accepted. And now she becomes a person that is still likable, but also kind of an asshole.
Yeah, she's on the other side of it more.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens between the first and the second series. Like the first series, maybe she's at the mercy of her family or something.
Yeah.
The second one, she's a bit more career-minded, making her way in the world.
But it seems in all the stories there's like I have sometimes written down the points, like there's like the confusion is always present, like, and there's always like this moment between like I want to be that other people are proud of me and a bad conscience that comes on the other hand, which was already in the stories you read before. There's like a mix that seems to interest you.
Yes, well, yeah. A weird idea, actually. That what your family think of you, as if that matters. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Somehow it's kind of. What do you mean though? Like proud?
Proud, like, you know, when you read the story about the wedding dress, it was actually always about you want that your auntie and your family is proud of you by doing a heroic gesture. And then Canary Wharf later wants to solve the problem of the wood delivery, which is also like, always is like longing for acceptance in a way. It's like, I want these people to be proud of me.
Yeah.
I find it quite interesting because I find it's like something, I mean, when you watch a movie, it's so like, you want to see this like kind of miscommunication of what just happens between something that is in your head and something that is the reality. It seems the characters always seem to be lost in the inner world of reception, what's going on around them, and the reality. Like if you think about your auntie, she's actually the one who made the big cut because she got the money from you and the £11,000. But nobody ever talks about that because she gives you the bad conscience by talking about in the end. How could you disrespect this great thing that you have now?
Yeah, I think like in that text, it's kind of interesting, this idea of being like well-meaning, or like having like this idea of like good faith. Yeah. I feel like the idea of like being some kind of victim is always interested in this idea of like, and this well-meaning figure is like some way of like repelling becoming a victim or something, or like portraying themselves as a victim.
Yeah. I find it interesting that exactly in this like, well, the one side is like, I'm trying my best here, and the other side is like, you're actually not doing so well, and it's always crashed together. And this actually, I think, creates this confusion that I find most interesting, where it's like, because I think it happens often, like I visited my parents the other day, and exactly something like this happens all the time, where it's like, I don't know, I can do whatever I want, but there seems to be a translation problem between me and the other side that doesn't even want to understand what I'm thinking, or they don't even care about that.
Yeah. I think that like, maybe, I don't know, it's quite scary maybe if you don't know what's going on and you're trying to like just navigate a situation.
Yeah.
I think in that the wedding dress text, it's about, there's this idea of like, he's just trying to, the character of whoever it's me, is trying to be well-meaning towards the situation, but you feel like, what is going on here? Like, what is happening?
Yeah,
it's not just moving through it.
And then you leave the situation and you're bankrupt basically. It was like the worst situation at all.
Yeah, but you know, I was sort of an idiot in that situation to do that.
I really wonder if that ever happens to people.
I feel like, well, yeah. Feel kind of does, yeah. It's real life.
Yeah. I wouldn't wonder.
Why Canary Wharf? It's just so...
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, I think I just spent quite a long time staring at it.
Would you like to live there?
Not really, no. But yeah, you sort of like, I became interested in it. It's obviously a very big thing that you can see from everywhere in London, and you just look at it and then sort of project into it. But like, what is it? Like, what's it doing?
Now I want to live in Canary Wharf.
Oh, cool,
yeah.
It sounds quite fun in that one. But maybe no one sounds a bit rubbish.
But it could be that most people don't even decide to live there, they were kind of placed there because of...
I met this woman the other day at a book fair, and she said that she was from New York and she wanted to buy the poster because they had Canary Wharf, and she was telling me this. She had just been given a job and they just put her there, and she was really freaked out by it, like the whole place, and she said it was horrible, and she couldn't understand it as a district because there's no people and there's nothing there, which is kind of what this residential district is trying to construct as sort of residential district.
How come Canary Wharf has time to write this autobiographical essays when she's at the same time the daughter of this?
I think she's got loads of time.
Yeah. But I think it's quite interesting to choose her as, you know, and on the one hand being this quite, I don't know, this product of this.
Do you think she's quite empty? Sorry.
No, I think. Yeah, I don't think she's empty. As I watched, she's quite complicated. I think often she's sort of just reacting to a situation, which is always confusing. But I think she's alright. but sometimes it's a bit mad. Yeah.
But it's quite good that like you've got this name like Canary Wharf, and Canary Wharf is beating up this person that represents nature. like stuff like that works quite well because like then it
Because it's such a contrast.
yeah, and it's like, but that is kind of what it's doing in real life as well. It's like, and it's like got this like violence and stuff of what it's doing, but it's taken into this other situation. And sort of works kind of.
Yeah, I almost imagine a person like Demi Moore or something, like matching up, like how she's represented in many movies I've seen in the 90s or something. Then she leaves and like turns his telephone on.
Yeah. Well, that's the bit where she knows she has to get on with her job. It's just sort of like, you know, that's the career-minded bit in this one, which is quite weird.
So, what's the plan with the stories? Will you continue writing them for the more Canary Wharf?
Yeah, the next one is, well, the next one she's writing is based on, it's earlier, it's in like 1982, and it's when the Enterprise Zone first appeared in sort of the Docklands Island Docks area, and it's really about the development of what was basically a huge council estate. It was like 95% socially rented, and it's like there was this thing called the London Docklands Development Corporation, which was a sort of government organisation which was sent in to sort of regenerate the area and make it sort of ripe for capitalism. And at the beginning they put a lot of like houses to buy because they're trying to get loads of owner-occupier, and this was before like right to buy, and it's kind of set right at the beginning. The next one.
Yeah, that's a similar principle like in the first 4 books you've written. Like I really enjoyed that when I read it, that it like starts like in the past and then it flips in the future and then it becomes the present again. Out of sudden you like can envision the whole process of development in Canary Wharf. Also in this way that you like it, even though it's a horrible story. If you read beside the line and the funny plot or anything, because it's in the end it's like the development and the like capitalization of the whole area of London.
Yeah,
and it's a very particular view on this.
I think what's interesting about this new residential district thing is that you can see it as like this is like the product of this, or what was happening in 1982, which is to try and make that area right for sort of business. Or like, first came the financial district, but to get the financial district there, you had to get rid of a lot of homes, and you had to sort of like change the sort of the environment. And then this residential district in the end is the sort of end point of this weird trajectory that it's taken, because it was never planned, and it's just a sort of like, that was what they always say, all the people involved in it. But yeah, it sort of led us here to where you have this weird residential district which is going to have these 3,000 new homes, and I don't know.
But this is
again,
a fact with the homes, like the 3,000 homes that come in there, like already there or something.
But that's another thing. It's just, I have no idea what these things are. It's kind of like where I was showing this CGI thing. It's like you just stare at this stuff and you're like, what is it? Like,
these are the pictures from the planned development. That's how the house is supposed to look.
Yeah, they're all the CGI images from like a lot of One Park Drive is like the main tower. Those from memoirs as well. So in a way, it's just projecting into these things and thinking what life must be like in there.
Yeah,
kind of interesting for me.
Do you think Canary Wharf could maybe meet up with Barbican Centre at some point, and they could talk about, because Barbican Centre would have some like some advice to give on kind of redeveloping.
I think
they'll clash.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, yeah, maybe just think because Barbican Centre is it was redeveloped a bomb site, wasn't it? But I wonder if there is a parallel there between the kind of idea that you can create communities.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Canary, like the Barbican, what is that? It's like sort of taking models and planning of like social housing, but Canary Wharf is like this different thing where you're trying to destroy social housing and have like, you know, owner-occupier flats, and it's like it's sort of the, yeah.
Like,
they're both like well, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, maybe it's right. Maybe in 20 years, it'll be very cool in Canary Wharf, you know?
Yeah,
like
maybe.
2000 something modernism, so.
Who knows? Like, no one might buy these flats, and like, it might be like rented to anyone. Like, it might not be luxury flats.
Like, how do you create a community? How do you go beyond the fakeness of the place? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
but it's not always like this. Even on the Hayward, now what is it called? In Elephant Castle, the former estate I was there. I never saw it because it was before my time here. Or what was it called? Haygate. They must have been kind of similar, no? In like the beginning, even though it has a different, again, it's different base on why it's built on, but it was like state of the art of its time, I guess, and it decays very easily.
Yeah.
Maybe that can also happen to Canary Wharf in its own way.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that would be a weird thing.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like, yeah, I don't know. You imagine that they're just going to be used for investment, and people are just going to have them, buy them, and use them as
I was
like whole money,
sometimes
but you know.
walking when you go the DLR and you go towards City Airport, and there's this like, I don't know what it's called, there's this one super sewer that comes out with one famous architect, which I find really interesting. Then there's the highest bridge in London, and it's also built around some wharf.
Oh,
And you know,
is that the one in the water? The structures in the water next
there's
to
a lot of fun stuff happening. I saw the other day Kate and I were there with Kate's brother, and we took the High Line, and there were people with like jet sets on their back, and they were flying over the water.
Oh, this is
I think that's what's happening all of a sudden. And when people are placed there, have nothing to do, they probably take jet sets on.
But that kind of thing has actually been happening for ages, because the London Docklands Development Corporation were always doing this stuff, like trying to make it funky in that area, and they're always using the docks around there, so they're always using it for like jet skiing and stuff like that. So
But you also need the people who are willing to be funky.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, jet skis, I mean, jet packs, no, they were flying.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
So it's very problematic because many of the things that with construction that paid by the state with a scheme like Help to Buy, I think, thing like that. You know?
Yeah.
Because they were like, okay, rent are too expensive in London, people need some flats, so we're gonna help them to buy a new flat and like stimulate the construction. But then they like do that, you know, some ugly standardized flat everywhere, you know what I mean? Which are very expensive, by the way.
Yeah, but
so
it's like,
it doesn't help anyone.
that's the thing, like with right to buy and all this thing, is just to sort of, yeah, this weird ending point where you get rid of like, or you destabilize, like say like council housing in the area. It's like 95%. I think it's like 30 now or something, and then you replace it. You put all these like luxury flats there. It's just this sort of very perverse sort of endpoint.
I think most of the things that you can walk are Help to Buy.
Are they?
Right,
they're all like luxury apartments. They're not meant to be for.
Well, they've always got like,
Okay, this like.
I don't know that. Yeah, they've always got these weird percentages. I don't know.
I have this feeling now with like first building the banks and the financial district, now building the appropriate housing around there. They could almost build a wall around it and say like we like separate ourselves from London, which is happening anyways.
That was always the first idea of Canary Wharf as well. Because I know they always called it a city in the city.
Okay.
That it was a separate thing, and so like it kind of is. I mean, it does function like that.
what's it called? A mile.
The what?
My enemy?
No, the mile square. I don't know.
Square mile, but that's
Square mile.
that's the city.
Yeah.
But the tax exemption exists in both sites, I think, doesn't it? They're both. Corporation tax doesn't apply to them, so the City of London and Canary Wharf within those institutions.
I imagine. I don't know. I know that like early on to make this enterprise there, and the idea of it is that anyone that wanted to have a business in the Isle of Dogs was not paying any corporation tax or anything. So it was about stimulating that area of London and to make whatever happened there with business, as long as it was business, it was fine. They made it really easy. And that's, yeah. and it's just this weird. I feel like with the residential district, there's this weird thing where you have this massive financial district that builds up over time, which is kind of really strange in itself. And now you have this residential district on the side of it, and it's
Why is it strange?
why is it strange that the financial district and I just.
I mean, I agree. It's a ritual question.
It's not strange, you're right? It's not strange. It's like it was a massive effort. Like the government has put a lot of effort into making this thing, and you know why they've done it because of the economy and the way that it actually affects everyone's lives. And then, but I think now this residential district is quite strange to me. It's quite interesting. I feel a bit like I don't know what it is. I look at it and I think, what's going on?
But don't you think it's convenience for people who work in that area?
Yeah, maybe.
Isn't that the whole point, though?
Could be.
Just convenience, and that's.
But if you work there, would you want to live there as well?
But I mean, it's the same in New York. I guess with Wall Street and people.
Yes and no. I mean, in a way, in New York, you have this area with this like skyscraper, but it's not area. In a way, you want to live there. There is nice things in the street.
But it's the mentality of people who are so involved in working in places like that.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah,
I think it's like trying to make it normal.
You know, it's
but I think
normal,
maybe it's also about just imagining that there are people there that like helps. So they say like we have like people living here, so it's not like an alien. Horrible thing, but it's like it's a part of life. Like we even have people
exactly.
Like,
you can't imagine it. We can't
life.
imagine it, but I think it's so convenient, and they get it. You know, or they get it within where they work. It's for them. It makes sense to live and work in a place like that. But which is so bizarre.
But it always feels like temporarily in the way of like, okay, I work a lot and then I need a place to stay close by. But it also involves some of the idea, but my real home is somewhere else where it's like nice and cozy in the fireplace and all this stuff that you probably don't have.
But I think the whole thing is like, you know, it's like a thing of like, no, our image is like that people live here, so it's a real place. It's not. It's not just. I think it is probably quite conscious thing. Like but it's in the story as well. Like we have a community, we have cozy stoves. Like it's not just. It's not.
You try to, but these things usually grow over centuries.
Yeah. But like people know maybe somehow that's what they have to do. Like you have to attach like a life to the thing, because if it was just Canary Wharf and it was just evil and just business, which now looks a bit more, I don't know, like then it would be too weird. But you have to like see that there are people who are enjoying that as well, like they're really enjoying the wealth, and like you can project yourself into that. You can be like, I could potentially be that person in that bathrobe or whatever. Like I don't feel like just resentful about the
But do you not
situation
think that
anymore.
people who do live there, work there also, you're talking about people who live outside of...
I think
who
the
work outside
reality...
of that, but they want to sort of...
I think the reality of like living there is probably quite like horrible, or like... I don't think it's like, or it doesn't really matter because it only affects like 3,000 people anyway.
What I meant was, I don't know if anyone who doesn't work within that would want to live in that.
No, but but like it's still like a thing. Like it's still like an image thing, I think.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I would imagine that people like see or get a sense of it.
It's an aspiration.
Yeah, I think so. And even for people who work there, like say, because there's probably lots of people who work in Canary Wharf and like shops, or I don't know, like how do you comply with that? Like how do you go in and work every day at like Starbucks?
Because for me, I guess somehow I get why somebody would live there who also works in Canary Wharf, but someone who would aspire to who would aspire to be part of Canary Wharf, who doesn't work in that environment.
I don't mean...
And they live in that. I don't know if I get...
I don't mean like Canary Wharf, but I mean like the environment. It's like the same abstract environment as you would see in a movie or something. It's not like about Canary Wharf.
No.
It's like seeing like a space that you can project yourself into. Or I think, like even when I see those images, even though they're like really alien, I do have some kind of response that like you could see yourself
Right.
You're right. I mean, not even the bankers don't want to live there, you know what I mean? Like,
No.
I mean, we don't want to live there because we're too cool for that. The bankers want to live in Baker Street, they don't want to live in a fake building.
Some want to live there. They want to live because for them it embodies everything that they aspire to. You know, for them they actually are comfortable living.
I'm not sure of that, actually.
I met people who are very happy living there. I don't get it, but that's why, I mean, now I have understanding why anyone would want to live there, because you meet people who actually love living there.
I think it's also like a certain, it's like a standard.
Yeah.
That is a worldwide standard. You look at any of these, and this is Canary Wharf, but you see the same images in Dubai, in New York, anywhere in the world. You see the same images, the same buildings being built, and I think that's a certain comfort for a certain type of people. It's obviously not aimed at us, but there's a certain new standard or whatever.
But it's also this like combination of like making the idea of business like desirable, like being around business. It's like it makes it also naturalizes it and makes it seem good and desirable or something.
I think it seems like. I think there's an aspect where like what I'm saying is like projecting into it and it not being part of your world. That I think there's an aspect you just don't have a clue what's going on, and maybe you feel like these people are grown-ups. You know, they're business people, they're grown-ups, and they live this way, and you're staring at it like it's like I don't know, child just feeling like what is this? Like what's going on? And that's kind of my relationship to this whole thing. I think
it's fake because it's a very like maybe North American way to live. You know what I mean?
But it's not fake on the other hand, because as it becomes a standard in many cities, it becomes absolutely a standard of like an idea of life, of taste, of convenience, also of control, because the people who build that and the politicians who agree to develop it, they have like the tools and like, oh, if everything looks the same, then we know exactly how to deal with this. We can alter it in the ways we like it, and we have the people at the places we like it, which is like the ideal world for certain people.
I mean, I agree with the critique, but I think I'm more optimistic because I think it's not yet standard, you know what I mean? Like, as you say, it's 3,000 people. Like, I think the bourgeois standard in Britain is to have a house somewhere a bit far from London than to live in a fake tower in Canary Wharf. Like, no one wants to live there. I mean, it's like, however.
But do you not think that's in stages? Because I feel like the next stage to that would be what you just said. So I feel like the level one aspiration is to live in Canary Wharf, I work in Canary Wharf, and then the next level after that is what you just said, is to aspire to live in the countryside and work in the city.
I think sorry, go ahead.
It's a big step, though. It's a big step from living there to having a house in the countryside.
I'm just saying in level.
People living there, it's not like super rich.
I think it's also
aspiring middle class people. You know?
It reminds me of my mom, because like say she comes from the Soviet Union or something, so would have always lived and then in Ukraine, but then we moved to Sweden and we always lived in flats. But say that's her dream, because she comes from like socialist housing, but she would want like an extremely upgraded form of like socialist housing. I feel like it's more for like an idea of like working class, because even if when you live there it's so much about work or something, like it's completely tied in with that. It's not about being like independently wealthy or something. I don't know. Isn't
it like, you know, the way that people like go on, like my mum like went on holiday to Dubai a few years ago, because it's touted as this place where you go on holiday, and then she came back, she was like, why did I do that? That was awful. And I feel like it's quite similar, because it's almost taken for granted. You see these images of these places that look so glamorous, and and that's just made this thing that you're supposed to do or like supposed to want, and then you sort of go there, you're like, what?
It's just horrible.
It's just like a business place, and it's kind of
but in a way, it's much more efficient, you know what I mean? Like, if we can't have what we want, you know what I mean? That everyone in this room can have a nice house in London, because then everybody in London wouldn't have what they want, you know what I mean? Like, too much people want to live in London, too much people want to live in the centre of London, so you need tower, you know what I mean?
I'm not arguing against that.
I agree with you, but I don't think it's a nice thing, and I would probably never live in that flat, you know?
What is a nice thing then? Like, what is we all agree that this is not a nice thing.
But
then what is the...
we didn't know what it was.
Like, how a newly developed neighborhood, you know, because obviously there has to be a new development.
I mean,
there has to be some sort of, you know, there has to be new living arrangements created.
That's
then how do you do it well? Because this is maybe the bad. Sorry,
I mean,
no, go ahead. I'm just stupid.
No, go on.
Well, there's lots of ways of doing it well that are not. And it's been shown in the past. Like there was loads of, you know, really good sort of social housing built that wasn't. You know, this is not social housing. It's not a good.
No, no.
But the point was like, to make the lecture today here is because it's this also a certain standard, like or maybe more average. Of a Victorian terraced house, which is like very typical for London living, as a contrast to the standard of Canary Wharf. To see, is that an idea?
No, like a decadent in a way, because many of the fancy flats nowadays were in buildings which were like a century ago social flats. You know what I mean? Like where I lived before, like a year ago, Bloomsbury, this nice like red building in like Marshall Street, and there was social housing for like.
But see, that's how areas change. This is not fancy in the moment, but maybe in 5 years, because all the houses get already sold and made up, it will be fancy naturally. And the same happens with developments that feel alienating there. But in 5 years, it's probably not, because I don't know.
I don't agree. I don't agree. You know. No, I don't agree. I think that there is a fakeness that which kind of need maybe a time. You know what I mean? Like people get used to it, because now you go in Canary Wharf, you have like a prêt-à-manger, a Tesco, and like. Two fake cinema and a fake tower, but maybe in 10 years to get some taste, I don't know. Can be nice.
But this house, with its cornice work, and it would have had the original, you know, this would have been the kind of house that, you know, the middle class or the maybe the upper, well, you know, you'd have needed a lot of money in the 19th century to live in this house and to live in all sorts of different parts of London where you find Victorian terraces or Georgian terraces. So the stuff that we covet now, you know, maybe filled a similar cultural position 100 or 150 years ago or longer. And the fact that Canary Wharf looks like Manhattan, I think, indicates to some extent that you just, to the extent that architecture kind of reflects ideology and power, you're importing an architectural model from another seat of power and saying this is, you know, this is how we'll project nowadays.
Or somehow it's rivalry, because you need to have something like that in every city, in every big city. You need to have that in Chicago. You need to have that in London. You need to have that in wherever.
Well, which is the American CBD model. Yeah. So if you look at the skyline of Los Angeles is flat, apart from a few big buildings in the middle.
Or maybe as long as you start to copy, then it's like fake. Immediately it gets to be fake. You know what I mean? When you go to New York, it's not fake. You know what I mean? It's very natural.
Yeah, but skyscrapers are there for a reason. I mean, there's industrialists built skyscrapers to make a point. I mean, space is always a consideration, but yeah.
No, I mean, no matter like that, you need skyscraper to make everyone living there. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think you can call it fake.
Yeah, no.
Because you don't agree with it, you can't call it fake, because it does exist and it has become what it is. You know,
I do agree with you, so I agree with what I said before. I mean, I mean the feeling, or like, you know.
I know. I agree with you, but disagree with you.
Thanks for having me.
I get what you mean. Yeah.
I mean, I think you can make it cool. I mean, I'm sure if I would live in Canary Wharf, make a party there. You don't want to do in Canary Wharf.
You've got the life.
Yeah.
Your concierge.
We could make it cool.
no.
3 times, I guess.
I don't know.
So what do we think about Canary Wharf? Maybe the author can say something.
Yeah. I mean,
do you hang out in Canary Wharf sometimes, or like?
Sometimes, but I don't know. Like,
I hope so, because if not, like everything works.
I guess the point of what I'm talking about is this idea that you just don't know what Canary Wharf is, and you sound kind of like, you know, it's just like, what are you talking about when you talk about, like, I want to live in Canary Wharf. That's such a weird idea. Like, you can live anywhere, and that's what I'm kind of interested in. Is this like, when you approach these things, it's like, what are you even talking about when you're looking at these things? Like, what is it? What is Canary Wharf? And like, and I find like approaches to it. It's just a very difficult thing, and I feel like it does affect so many things, but it's so slippery. you don't know what it is, and it's like, for me, it's not about.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not for me. It's not about like where, like, living there. If you want to live there, if you don't want to live there. So there are people who are going to live there. It's going to happen, but I am kind of interested in it as a construction. Like, how is it going to affect? How does it affect everything? How does it affect like the way London is? It's like a huge driver of certain ways of like existing, and I feel like that's why I'm kind of interested in it. Not as a district. So it's not interesting. It's like these places are all over the world, but it's like, what does it do to the city as a whole? What does it do to London? What does it do to your life? What does it do to people? What kind of people does it produce? The whole thing is like a whole machine. So
it's interesting that it's so obviously like fabricated as well. It's not just like something that just happens. Like what you said as well, from what like historically, that it was like planned like thing and stuff, and it is like a brand, and like that comes with like all these like considerations of like what kind of person it produces and what images it produces, and like I don't know, like it's not just like I mean, obviously that has like some aspects of it that just happened or whatever, but it's kind of a thought through.
Isn't that always the same? Like coming again to the streets here, and there's like plenty of where you have Victorian House next to Victorian House. It seems to have happened in one go. Somebody has planned the whole area out.
You know, it's my topic, you know, like I idea of fabricated history. I mean, I work on German history, but it's the same kind of like with development, and in the time when you read like the discourse about them, they were saying the same thing what we're saying now. It's so fake, it's when in man time. I know if you go there, this place, they look so authentical, and I think it's your topic. What is authentical? What is the community? Or how can you like have just like a feeling of like the thing seems to sort of fit next to the place and to the time, you know? And I think maybe those things are like, I don't know, too futuristic, too advanced or too late somewhere in some criteria, and you don't feel that you could live there because it wouldn't work, you know what I mean? There is no harmony in it in a way.
Yeah, it just feels like
it's just like an extreme.
It feels like it's like a dressed movie set or something. Like even when you go in like their public spaces where they have like a bit of greenery, like they have like real trees in there planted and water coming through it, but then they have like fake grass on the ground, and I kind of feel that's like emblematic of the way the whole area feels like. It's like you're walking onto a movie set, but there's not actually any real living.
But if you would make it differently, it would always also look wrong.
But that's interesting as well, I think, to connect it to other places and other places being planned. I think it's just like an extreme example of it. But if you look at Dalston, in a way, you could be like also like, God, this greengrocers is so obviously fake, or like it's obviously like been like completely ripped, or like something's been ripped away and something's been like replaced it or something. Or it's sort of interesting just because it's like
it's very hard, if I may say, to kind of translate like aesthetic category in political one, because in Paris it's the reverse, for instance. It's really hard to construct everything, you know what I mean? But it is a good thing in a way, you know what I mean? Like in Paris, if you're an architect come with a great project, people are gonna say no. Like if you just want to change like the painting of the facade of your house, you'll have to make an application. It's gonna take years, you know what I mean? And in a way, someone can say, but the left position in a way would be to do that because it's efficient, you know what I mean? You don't have the time, people have no house, you need to like give them something, and if you construct like the same.
But it's also heavily restricted.
In London, you mean?
No, in Paris.
I mean. So maybe, you know, in London it's not so bad in a way, you know what I mean? But they do that, but they construct that, it's efficient.
Yeah, but it's about who those houses are for.
And who plans it like, or something, because there is a bigger plan.
But that's almost part of the alienation of like feeling so separate, or like feeling like you don't understand, or you're like gazing at the thing, because it really doesn't feel like any of it is built for any of us.
That's exactly right. I mean,
and
this
so,
is kind of,
I don't know.
I mean, what I got, I'm sorry?
I was going to say that like the idea of telling stories about my family in reference to Canary Wharf is just to do that. Just like put stories about your family in Canary Wharf, and it's so weird. It just feels like, what is that? It's like.
But isn't it also like, because with there's like a generational thing that's going on with architectural fathers. Like there's the fathers that like built it, so you're kind of like denaturalizing it like from the beginning, and then you've got this like daughter that's kind of slightly fucked up, but she doesn't really know she is, but you know, she's quite weird, and she finds things like she's quite alienated from stuff.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like it shows these like power dynamics or something. There's like people making decisions at the top, this like group of men, and then there's people generations after like dealing with it and like not knowing what's happened before or why.
Yeah.
And that's the confusion that I'm sort of interested in about the character. Like that's why I don't feel like she's good, bad, or whatever.
Yeah.
She's just going through this weird process, and she's got this like scenario, and each father has a different upbringing, and each situation is differently strange.
Yeah, that's why I feel like maybe it's good to kind of get away from talking about the sort of just general gentrification thing, and it's more about this sort of like this kind of like symmetries of power or whatever. Like, some people making decisions, the other people like dealing with it, like not knowing what decisions are made.
Yeah, I think that's exactly but because in a sense, it's like I just don't. I mean, I read about this stuff to like, it's like, you know, like because it's involved in the book, but it's just like actually thinking about the development side of it, and this stuff is not maybe what I find interesting about it. What I do find interesting is about the relations and the people and that kind of articulation.
And that's in a way it's like a human development. No, the architecture is architecture, and somebody has to build the houses and whatever the criteria is for that are. But the adaptation of the people is like as if nature grows into something, but it's not nature, and it's just like people who are like kind of like aliens in between, I guess, and they take over this place in a certain way. Nothing will ever look like this 3D rendering because it can't, and it starts with an artificial astroturf, but it's not how it's going to be. It's
but
just
there's like, but then there's this kind of, there feels like you're kind of always trying to pick out this kind of like kind of grotesque side of like human decision making, like the really fucked up bit, like the bit with the auntie and like making the, you know, the inheritance, making you buy the inheritance, and it just feels like there's a relationship between like tracing back in a weird way the effects of these like fucked up, really selfish or like short-sighted decisions that people have made to make profit. And then
I mean, the anecdote is quite straightforward like that. It's so horrible, but I guess.
But I think there's a relationship between that and the books.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, why does anyone do anything, or like the intention and the way that stuff happens, I guess. And the way that
you mean the people who buy the flat, or like the people who like it's the side of the?
I think we're talking. I was just talking about the book, because the people that buy the flat or whatever, they would just appear in my fiction, so they would just be whatever I've just been reading to you, and you know, there are people that like interact with the woodman. In my head, in my world, this is how it works. This is the way that I understand it. I have no idea who would buy the flat, and I like, you know, I've got this like a banal idea, but it's not. I don't know. It's not so interesting to me. It's like someone who works in Canary Wharf, or someone who wants it because they want to store money somewhere. Like that's just the two like options that come in my head. But I guess in the Canary Wharf thing, it's like you get into specifics a bit more.
But it's more. It feels more like you said about the family, and like the fact that she's the daughter is really significant because it's like her taking on the brunt of this sort of fatherhood.
Yeah, of
somehow.
Course.
So then she's sort of trying to prove herself against a system that doesn't necessarily accept her and would have rather forgot her somehow, I guess.
Yeah. And I think in the first one, it's like much more like the first series. She's much more like on the receiving end, or trying to like. She's much more clearly like alienated from the people that she's trying to like interact with, and she's also trying to like negotiate the situation, which is always strange in some way and frustrating. And the second one, she's more active, but I feel like it's the same attempt at trying to like, access this sort of like parental world or something that's been set up for her to navigate it.
Wasn't it in one of your books there where she went into the tunnel all the time to calm down or something? I think I like that very much. That it's like the part of the story is, I don't know the name of the tunnel, but there's
the Limehouse Lane.
Yeah, exactly. And Canary Wharf always goes there because it calms her down the most to go into this like fruity tunnel.
Yeah, but she does nowhere to walk really. But yeah.
And this is kind of like, it shows what it is now. It's like this tunnel that's connecting Canary Wharf with the rest of the city. and it's kind of like a non-human area. It's like highly toxic almost.
Yeah, I mean, also the history of the Limehouse thing is like one of the most expensive, or it was at the time, the most expensive road ever built in Europe at the time. And also, it's the first piece of infrastructure to have a PR company to have to do the Limehouse because they. I mean, that book is really about the ramifications of smashing down the council housing and the political implications that has. But yeah, the idea that like in the end you find some kind of security in this tunnel. Yeah, quite bleak.
Okay. Shall we stop with the video and then relax a little bit, have a more drink, can have a cigarette in the kitchen, and some people who are on the hallway the whole time can come in and kind of properties. Thanks Oliver.
Thank you for this.